And I just want to say, on Shabbos, I found I have this book. So
that's the book.
Yeah, very nice. I started to go through it.
Did you?
Started.
You saw his approach.
I just started it. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
His approach is fascinating.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the book? Sorry, what's the book called? What's that book called? I just saw a little of it.
10 keys to understanding. It's a psychological. It takes a psychological approach to the 10 spheros, to the 10 emanations that are brought in Kabbalah and Chasidus. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Page 284. Everyone, please. 284. We're kind of towards the middle to the bottom of the page. But just to recap, since we didn't learn since Thursday, we're learning here about an interesting idea, an important idea. And that is that in order to be effective in making the Yetzer Hara, or in classical Hasidic terms, the Nefesh Abamis, be responsive to the Nefesh Elikis and to the call of Hashem, it requires a two-pronged process. One is called Chakika Mibachutz, that's number one, an engraving from the outside, and the second is called a Chakika Mibifnim. And the reason that Rebbe brings it here in the Maamar, in continuing the discussion that we've been talking about, is because we're talking about the three categories of mitzvahs, Eidus, Chukim, and Mishpatim. So we already finished discussing Eidus and Mishpatim, and now he's in the middle of discussing Chukim, laws, mitzvahs that have no reasoning. And as we said, they don't even have a tam komus. We discussed this at length last week, so I don't want to repeat it now. Anyway, so the language in the Torah HaKadosh, the Holy Torah, is Im bechukoisai teilechu. It doesn't say Im bechukot teilechu. It says the plural chukoisai. So the Rebbe says, what's the reason it says plural? And he says, because the word chukah, besides meaning a statute, it also has a meaning from the term chakika. Chakika means to engrave. And when we talk about the aspect of mitzvahs as they are in the realm of an engravement of God into us and us into ourselves, there are two prongs, two levels, two stages. One is chitzonius and one is pnimius. And what does that mean? It means if you go straight to the Nefesh Abamis and you spend time influencing it to leave its animalistic tendencies, and you go right for broke, you won't succeed. Why? Because to change the ethos of anyone and anything, it requires a gradual, usually, there's always an exception, it requires a gradual approach. And the gradual approach is such that you have to first deal with it in its outside, chitzonius, its exterior. You need to somehow get its exterior to be calm and receptive. And when you do that, you can get in and make a change in the real inner thinking of the Nefesh Abamis. And Chasidus calls these two steps Chakika mibachutz and Chakika mibipnim. So the Rebbe says this is why it says Bichukoisai, plural, because we're talking about the approach to mitzvahs that will make a dent in the Nefesh HaBamis in a way that the Nefesh HaBamis will get it and make a change, because you first impacted it from in its exterior, and then you got to its pneumius. And with this, and he gave an example that first, when you take a piece of wood and you want to make of it a keli, and you want the keli to be pretty inside, you need to first prepare the outside. For example, before a sofer, and we have a sofer here, writes the Parshas, or the Megillah, or the Sefer Torah, you have to prepare the cloth. You have to prepare the parchment. Preparing the parchment is compared to writing, it's an ugly activity. You got to sand it, whatever. It's a whole process, and an important process. And later you can ask Moshe; he'll tell you. I went once with Moshe to Beitar. Actually, Ari, I see, is not here, but we're talking about Beitar. But I remember, I think he went to someone specially who sold cloth. There are different grades in cloth, and he knows all about it. I don't. But the point being, hi Ari. The point being that the process of refining the parchment to make it suitable to write on it a beautiful Torah, Megillah, or Tefillin, or Mezuzah requires first taking care of the parchment. That would be an example of the Chakika Mibachutz. And once you have the right parchment, you can start writing, which is the Chakika Mibifnim. So, using that as an example, so the Rebbe doesn't use the example of the parchment here, he uses a keli, a vessel. But it's true for not just a physical vessel, right? In other words, let's say you make a chair. You can make a chair in all kinds of ways, but the chair then will have, splinters. You made a chair, you'll sit down on that chair, and if you didn't sand down the chair, you're going to get splinters. So first, you have to sand down the chair. You have to make sure the chitzonius is good. And once the chitzonius is good, then you can go to the pneumius. And in the same way, Baruch, we have to deal with the Nefesh HaBamis. The Nefesh HaBamis has a chitzonius dika part to itself, and it has a pneumius dika part to itself. So we tend many times to run to the pneumius. We're going to change the ethos, the philosophy, the shita of the Nefesh HaBamis. My friend, before you can do that, you have to get the Nefesh HaBamis to be sanded down, it to be not rough and tough. Otherwise, this Nefesh HaBamis, you could talk to it till you turn blue in your face, it's not going to help you. So let's see now what he means inside the text. And this upcoming piece is a very beautiful piece. Here he doesn't really elaborate on it, but in other Maamar he does, but he gives us briefly the idea. We are now 284, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom, the second word on the line. The line begins with the word Chomri Yusoi, and we're holding the next word, Vahu. Vahu Inyan Psuke de Zimra. What part of davening? Now, where is the arena? Where is the place? And when is the time to sand down the Nefesh HaBamis? It's during davening. Davening is the time, because when you're working, you're working. You're sleeping, you're eating, you're taking care of your kids. The Alter Rebbe, in chapter 26 of Tanya, says there a word that people don't pay attention to. He talks about the Nefesh HaBamis making a person feel depressed and bad about their sins. And the Alter Rebbe says there that you need to take time and you need to have the right time to deal with that issue. Because if you, and he says that if you're getting depressed about your sins during work, it's a ploy of the Yetzer Hara. You know why? Because when you're working, you should be working, not thinking about your sins. So what the Yetzer Hara is doing to you at the time is, he's finding a way to schlep you more down. How will it schlep you more down? Because not only will you be upset about your sins, you won't be working, and you'll have problems from not working. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says over there, you have to pick it up over there, but every word is exact. The Alter Rebbe is alluding to the fact is there is the right time to make a cheshbon, and there's the wrong time to make a cheshbon. So here we're starting to talk about Psukkah de Zimra. When is the right time to deal with refining the nefesh abamis from the outside during davening? And what part of davening? Psukkah de Zimra. Let's look. Psukkah de Zimra. This idea is expressed during the section of Shachris called verses of song, of praise. The word Zimra, what does the word Zimra mean, Hillel? The literal meaning is song, praise. But the word Zimra also means Lizamer. It's a social, look at the root of, look at the word, Zayin Mem Reish.
Yes, it means to cut.
To cut,
right?
yeah, exactly. Lizamer Oritzim. What's Oritzim mean? Oritzim means thorns, I think. To cut away the thorns. During Psukkah de Zimra, Yonason, it's the time to cut away the things that get in our way of walking, which hurt us, which are called thorns. And as we say in one of the Hallelujahs, the exaltedness of Hashem is in their throat. And a double-edged sword is biyadam in their hand. Now, he doesn't explain here. What does it mean, a double-edged sword? Why not a sword? What's cheref pipiyos? Pipiyos means, Moshe, a sword that on both sides it has the edges. Not just one side. That's what it's called, a double-edged sword. So Chasidus explains that's the idea of cutting away the Yetzer Hara in Bichitzonius is one way, and Bipnimius is the other way, i.e. a double-edged sword. So he briefly says here that the activity of Psukkah de Zimra, in addition to praising Hashem, or better said, the way you accomplish the real praising of Hashem is by cutting away the outside interferences of the thorns that get in your way. Thorns, the spiritual idea of thorns. There is changing the ethos, the mind, the heart. That's already a much more pneumius activity. You know, to change your thinking is so hard. To change your feeling is even harder. But that's the Adam, that's the inside of man. That is man. Then there is the externalities of man, which are things that are just, you know, in a certain way superficial, but nevertheless they get in the way. So you're trying to walk on a certain path, and you have branches here, thorns here, holes here, schmutz here, and it causes a balagan, and you get hurt. So in order to get to your destination, the first thing you want to do is clear the path. Clearing the path is the avodah of lezamer aritzim, cutting the branches, cutting the thorns, in spiritual terms. In other words, those ugly issues of ego, gaiva, and taiva, and kina, jealousy, and all those things are superficial to man. That's not who man is. Those are activities that man involves himself with. And those are called the branches and the thorns, and that you have to lezamer. You got to cut them out. There's no negotiating here. You don't cut them out, you ain't getting to your destination. Or if you're getting there, you're going to get scratched up or bent up or ultimately end up in a hospital. Right? So the first thing you got to do is clear up those ugly issues and come to your senses and understand that, yes, Moshe.
Just a quick question. I know that generally speaking, in Chabad, we are very particular about not skipping parts of Pesukei Zimra. Is that connected to this? Can you comment on that for a moment?
The overall issue of not skipping is because, according to the Kabbalah, the 4 parts of davening is like a ladder. It says it's shlivos, steps. There's Pesukei Zimra, Birchas Krishma, and Amida Shmonesrei. And they correspond to the 4 worlds, Asiyah, Yetzira, Bria, and Atzilus. And if you skip over, you fall down and you break your legs. Meaning, I'm being harsh. I mean to say you can break your legs. In other words, you can hurt yourself. So that's the idea there. Now, so the first thing I'm telling you is that's really a Kabbalistic idea that you want to follow, because that's what the Kabbalah says. So the Kabbalah doesn't, give room for skipping. Halacha does, but that's a different realm. But if those that you follow Kabbalah and Chassidim generally do, not only Chassidim, literature too, but the Vilna Gaon was a massive makupel, I would think that you should keep to that. But that's a different discussion. Now, the reason, maybe part of the reason is as explained here, and as you're saying, that, you don't want, in practical terms, each step is necessary for the proper entry into Atzilus, into Amida. And if you don't have that spiritual preparation, the Amida is lacking. Now, you have to understand that unless you're sensitive to these issues, and you want to be sensitive, it's like, I don't know where I am in davening. I'm just davening, So if halacha says I should catch up, but in Chabad, in particular, I haven't seen this really in many other Hasidic groups too. They do skip. I see them in shul. They go in and they jump over. I can't say all, but in Lubavitch, it's a big no-no. Lubavitch was very, very particular. Again, it's not an Aveira, okay, because halacha determines whether it's right or wrong. But on a spiritual level, in Chabad, it was something that was very, very important. Now, if you're wondering or you're asking, does that supersede the halacha? If you come into shul, you come in late, and if you don't skip over, you're not going to daven with the minyan. The way I was trained by my mashpiyim in Lubavitch, yes. The Kabbalistic idea, because the whole idea of daven, and by the way, there's halachic support to it, which the Litvaks and others wouldn't accept. But that is, according to Rabbi Chaim Brisker, Rabbi Chaim writes, and the Rebbe quotes this in his letter, it's very important, that if you stand Shemon Esrei and you don't know before whom you're standing, you really haven't davened Shemon Esrei. He doesn't write that you have to daven again. Rabbi Chaim does not write that. But he definitely writes, if you don't know before whom you're davening, you haven't davened. Now, what does that mean, you haven't davened? So that's where the dispute is. Does that mean halachically you haven't davened, or just spiritually? I don't know. But Rabbi Chaim was saying it kind of in a halachic way, in a nigla way. So according to Rabbi Chaim's thinking, I would argue that if you skip over, it's like you don't know where you are and you're not connecting. So what's the point of standing Shemon Esrei if you don't know before you're standing? So the same logic of Rabbi Chaim would apply there. And that's what Chasidus is saying. And that's what Chabad is saying, that you need the 4 steps in a continued, gradual way to get to Shemon Esrei. Otherwise, you're just saying words, and it's an empty experience. And the proper experience, as we're learning here, let's take for an example. V'cheref b'piyas b'yoda. How many people think daily about what that means? And even people who know the Taich, okay? People who learned in yeshiva, and they took the time to go over the siddur, and they know that it means a double-edged sword. I promise you, you can count on your hands, both in the Chabad shul And in Deish Kodeshu, how many people know what it means really? Why? Because they didn't learn that. It's only brought in Chasidus and maybe Musar Sfarim. I'm not even sure. So and then you could bring Mishalim from Musar Sfarim. That's not in Chasidus. The point being that the activity of davening is an avodah. It's a whole activity. So to skip that, and it's necessary to build up, to have the stamina to get into Shmon Esrei. And if you just go into Shmon Esrei unprepared, for the average person, it's a meaningless experience. Now, furthermore, if you're going to say, well, how many people, even if they know about V'cheref B'piyas B'yodam, are so spiritually sensitive and inclined that when they get to Shmon Esrei, they know they're in Atzilus. They know they're one with God. So first of all, there's no question about it that someone that knows what V'cheref B'piyas B'yodam means and takes the time during Sukkot Zimra L'zamer Haritzim to think about the ugly character issues that plagues them, and they want to cut them away, there's no question that they're more prepared for Shmon Esrei. So whether they know that they're in Atzilus and all that, maybe not. But are they more sensitive? Yes. I saw Rabbi Reichik over Shalom, and he was a big oivit. And I put this on my video of Reb Mendel Futterfass, because when they came to my house, it was him and Reb Mendel, and I videoed him standing at my wall, starting Shmon Esrei. And I wrote there in the, in the transcription of what's going on, I wrote, notice that it took him about a minute till he started Baruch Ato Hashem. You see him going back, you see him going 3 steps forward, and then all of a sudden, you don't see him doing anything. 30 seconds to a minute. I can't say exactly how much the time is. And it hit me after looking at this. Before, when he said Hashem Svosai Tiftach, because that's he's supposed to say that right away, right? He said it so slow and so thoughtful that it took him 30 seconds to a minute to get into Baruch Ato Hashem. And that's why you don't see him kneeling Baruch Ato Hashem till 30 seconds or a minute later. That's called an entry into Shmon Esrei. That can only come if you've already worked on in your davening before, L'zamer Haritzim and everything else. So you said, so to skip over it's like, what's the point? So one will say, well, the halacha says don't sleep in and hog your pillow. That's what the halacha says. Like Rabbi Schuster McGershin from California he would say to us, taught us Chasidus, don't have a love affair with your pillow. Grabbing and hugging your pillow. Enough already. You know what I'm saying? So that we won't say. But what we'll say is we're concerned about the halacha. I mean, it's a fallacy. It's a warped way of thinking, I'm sorry. It's not a Yiddish way of thinking. You'll say, why does the halacha provide this suggestion? Because there are extenuate times when you need to do it. I mean, there's always an exception to a rule. In other words, it's the exception to the rule. It is not the rule. And what has become is we come late and we make it a rule that is so against halacha that's not what the halacha meant. The halacha meant in a oinus, in a situation when you're in oinus, and there's takets, there's a man of krishma. There are, at that time you use this halachic permission. This is my humble opinion. If one wants to argue with me and prove me wrong, I'm fine with it. But that's the way I see the issue. And as you said, Moshe, and I'm glad you brought it up, in Chabad, it's an ikar, not a tafel. Okay. Can we go on? Because it really was a side mark. So going back to L'zamer Haritzim. So he says further, K'maimer Kadaskafya Sitra Achra Instalik the Yikor the Kucha Brichu. It says in the Zohar HaKadosh, when you will subjugate the negative side, the Sitra Achar, the Klipa, Istalik, Yikara, the Kutchabrichu, you will reveal the preciousness of Hashem, Bekulu Almin, in all worlds. It's through exalting Hashem, Behilulim, with praise, Visishbachos, with lauding and praise, Mizbatim al Deizeh Haklipus Racha. That itself will nullify the klippus and the negative side. Shlo yinku min hakadusha. They should nurture from the kedusha. V'hainu shlo yitiyeh lehem achiza b'nefesh elikis. They shouldn't have any nourishment from the godly soul. You know that the klipa tends to suck off kedusha. It knows this kedusha, this is where it's at. This is the mint. This is the gold and the mint. So it says, give me a little bit, I want a nashes from here. And it's like someone, a smoocher, a whatever they call them. He's looking for a cigarette. He's nooching there, nooching there. Give me a smoke. Give me. You know, he's running around. It's much of Shabbos. He hasn't smoked all Shabbos. He's going nuts. But he doesn't have his pack of cigarettes. So he goes here, right? The Nefesh Abamis, the Klipa, looks to snore from anyone a cigarette. Or the cigarette being, Delikus. Because it knows Delikus is good. I'm sorry for the comparison. Cigarettes are terrible and dangerous. But the idea being, I had to say that, Hillel, I'm sorry. It wasn't a good example in that aspect.
No, I thought that was a great name for the Yetzer Hara, the Schnorrer.
The Schnorrer.
Good nickname.
Yeah. So this is what it does. It looks to suck off, nourish from Kedusha. So through praising Hashem and lauding Hashem, we cut away the outside forces from the Nefesh Abamis. And not only do we cut away the bad thorns and twigs and branches, but we also elevate the Nefesh Abamis u'metziim min hachumrius, and we extract it from its corporeality. It's learned many times there is gashmius, physicality, and there is yoinus and also chumrius. Chasidus uses both words. What's the difference? Gashmius is gashmius. We're in the world of a gashmi. Chumri is, what a delicious steak. Eat your steak. But what are you making a whole big deal about your steak? Chumrius. You know, lavishing in the gashmi. Indulgence, heathenism, all that. It's like grubkite. So the Nefesh Abamis, initially it gets to a point where it's totally grub, totally coarse and corporeal. So the first thing you have to do is extract it out of that and say, look, I know you want your gashmi, you like gashmi, but just stick with the gashmi. So that's the first thing, right? You elevate the Nefesh Abamis by taking it out from the corporeality. And this all, here stops the issue of what's called Chakika Mibachutz. This is the engraving from the outside. I hope it's clear to you, but again, you know, he didn't elaborate at length. There's certain Maamarim, we maybe learned it, we didn't remember, but where he talks really at length in detail, what does it mean to cut away the externality of the Nefesh Abamis. Now he goes to the second chukoisai, plural, to the second type of chakika, and that is v'chakika mibifnim, engraving the Nefesh Abamis from the inside, writing the beautiful letters on the parchment. For example, top of 285. This is through the mitzvahs of chukim, k'meshekosov, be'eir chofru sarim, a posuk in Bamidbar. a well was dug by the ministers. B'mechoykek b'mishnosayim. B'mechoykek goes on Moshe Rabbeinu b'mishnosayim through the stick, the staff that he used. K'moy habeit haneveya mitato li'ela. What does it mean? One of the explanations is just as a well which flows forth from the bottom, from under the earth, li'ela, upwards, mayim chayim, and we call this living waters. This is the love for Hashem. Which one? There's three loves, right, Moshe? B'chol nafshecha, b'chol levavecha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol miyodecha. So the Rebbe says, when the love comes from the well under the earth, meaning deep inside you, and you dig it out, and it comes forth, then it's classified as Mayim Chayim, living water, and it represents the deepest level of love for Hashem, called with all your might, B'chol miyodecha. U'kamoy Mayim Chayim, why is that? Just like living waters, Shenoivim Tomed B'li Hefsik, which are constantly flowing without interruption. And you all know what the Mishnah says, that if you find a well and a river, and it's been flowing for 7 years, but once in 7 years it dries up, it's called Mayim Ksuvim, Chav Zayin Kizuvim, Kozuf, false waters. Wait a minute, 7 years, at most, except one time, it's flowing, and only once it dries up. Says the Mishnah in Halacha that water coming from that river is not Mayim Chayim, and it is not acceptable to use to sprinkle on a tummy mace for as part of the Parah Adum and other such laws of Tahara. But why? Baruch, why? Most of the time it's Mayim Chayim. Because not Tamid. It's not constant. It's not eternal. Emes, truth, is Emes the entire time. And in fact, the Ralbag says, Emes maski mikol tzad. Not only is it in time Emes throughout, right? But in every aspect, and it's Emes. You can't say it's Emes only here or only there. Then it's not Emes. It might be called, as the Alter Rebbe writes in Perek Yudalid, Sfas Emes, Emes, Emes Lamita. There are different levels, okay? But Emes Shebe Emes, the real and ultimate truth is, in every aspect it's Emes. So the Rebbe says here, the B'chol Ma'itcha, Mayim Chayim, living water, Shenoivim Tamid B'li Hefsik. They're constantly flowing. Constantly flowing. K'moikein, Avazu, this love for Hashem of B'chol Me'itcha, with all your might, Ein Lo Hefsik, has no interruption. If you have this experience, you have constant Ava LaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it comes from deep inside you, and as long as you're alive, it's there. And what you've done is you brought it into a revealed state to your daily activity. Weiter. When we're talking about b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, the first two ideas of love for Hashem, we call that a rational tam v'das, a rational love. Chaylefes v'ayveres. It passes. It ceases. It's here today, gone tomorrow, if that long. Here now and gone after we daven. We daven, we get ourselves so emotionally excited, and we say we love you Hashem. I love you Hashem, and I'm ready to do anything. And then go home and you eat your bowl of cereal, and the phone rings, and then you tell we forgot about the Ava. All of a sudden, you love the cereal and you love your work, and it's all. And what happened? Chaylefes v'yoveres. The tendency of Ava, b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, is not emes la'mitoi. it does have an interruption. And that's the definition of those avos. And it's not that those avos have no purpose. They do. But they don't supply the person with b'chol mi'oitcha. Mashen came conversely, ha'avo ha'biltu mubelas, the infinite avo, eina nifsekes li'olam, has no interruption ever. Eina nifsekes li'olam. V'zeu b'chinas mayim chayim. And that's why an analogy for mayim chayim is ava b'chol mi'oitcha, chol mi'odecha. Living water, mayim chayim. So now go back to the Mishnah, Moshe, a river that dries up once in 7 years. The Mishnah says what? It's possible to kiddush mechatos. You can't use it for purifying. It's possible. It's invalid. But it's only once in 7 years. It's like someone says, I only lied once in my lifetime. You lied. The fact that's once in a lifetime, so on the scale, when we talk about mitzvahs and avedas, your scale is way up there, but you still have a little dot. And if you have a little dot, you have to get rid of that dot. You have to cleanse yourself where it's completely clean. And this is something important for us to think as we daven and learn and grow and our years move on. It's important to, that's the whole year, Chasidus and the Elul and Tishrei, you know, to reflect back, what still have I not covered? And believe me, there's plenty that I haven't covered. And to do tshuva for those things. And they're very, very simple, you know. It's like a few years ago, I got a call during the, I think it was Elul or Chasidus Tshuva, I think it was Chasidus Tshuva, and a former student of mine, a bacher, I was a mashpia in the Lubavitch, in Ole Torah, it's a Lubavitch Yeshiva in Crown Heights. And my students were around 15 years old, the third Masifta. And they were a very bright group, a very good bright group, but big chutzpanyaks, big mouths, you know, but clever. And we had a very, very good class because, you know, I was delivering to them good material, and I had good students, and the dynamics worked out nicely. Anyway, one of these students calls me as a married man living in Chicago, actually, a shliach, I think. So he says, "You remember me?" I says, "Boy, do I remember you. You were the one of the sharp cookies." You know, the previous Rebbe calls sharp cookies in his letter, in his writing. He says, "Sharfe yarmekes," sharp kippahs, sharp yarmekes. It was an expression. It looks like in Poland, they wore the ger Hasidim and they wore their yarmulkes sticking out their head. You know, you've seen ever a ger wear his yarmulke in the back and the head here. You know, the certain. So they used to call them sharfe yarmulkes. You know, witty and sharp. So this bacher was a sharfe yarmulke. You know, he had a very good head and he understood well the Chasidus that we were learning, but he had a good chutzpah mouth. So I said to him, when he called me, I remember you were such a type of bacher, you know. But fine, you know, I was able to handle it. So I said, but why are you calling me? It's like 5-10 years later. I'm calling to ask you mechila. And it's Chasidus Tshuva, I want to ask you forgiveness. I said, what did you do that? I have no idea what you did. He says, I was chutzpahdik to you. And I used to laugh at you. And I feel very bad. And I want to ask mechila. And I said, you have 100% mechila. I never for a moment walked away with a grudge. I'm not the type of a person. And if something bothers me, I quickly get rid of it and dump it out. But I found it so interesting that so many years later, someone would call because they were making a cheshbon. It's Chasidus Tshuva, you know, and they reminded themselves that they felt they insulted their Rebbe, their teacher. They were chutzpahdik, and it bothered them. So what we're learning here about the Ava b'chol me'odecha, it's not so much in the, you know, the tshuva realm, it's in the love realm, in the positive realm, is Einechalefes Vayrevedes. It's there the entire time. So if you tap into it, you can get this Ava to impact you in a way that you didn't have that experience before. What I'm saying is that contrary to the attitude that I am who I am, and I know my weaknesses, and if I scratch out a little love for Hashem during my davening and all that, but I am not on the level to have this Mayim Chayim. This Mayim Chayim is for big tzaddikim. I'm a regular, ordinary fellow. The fact is that it is us who say twice a day, Shema b'chol vavcha yohavta chol vavcha b'chol nafshu chol meidecha. Who are we saying it to? Ourselves. So it's all about us. It's all about us. Excuse me. And if you rule out your ability to attain b'chol ma'idcha kol meidecha, you're not living with what you're saying in the Shema. However, you first need the Psukim de Zimra. You see again, you're not going to get b'chol ma'idcha from eating popcorn and ice cream and listening to the news and everything else. It ain't happening. And if anyone tells you it is happening, they need a good doctor, a good psychiatrist. It's not happening. I'm sorry. When you're involved in Lazamer Aritzim, in Psukim de Zimra, and you think about your life, and you think about the issues that need correction, and you work on yourself as much as you can, and again, and again, and again, day in, day out, you see that all of a sudden, what was important to you a year ago, and 2 years ago, and 3 years ago, doesn't talk to you anymore. And your real self, which is the neshama, comes to be. In other words, what I'm saying now, and it's very important. Sometimes a Baal Teshuvah thinks everything I'm doing is an adjunct to myself. And who's myself? My rock and roll and my LSD and my big shotness and all the shtusim that I was involved in, right? Or a guy who's not about the yeshiva, he's a yeshiva bacher, and him bragging the yeshiva and saying a pilpul, and he was the macho fellow, right? That's who really I am. And now it's a cover-up. I got kids, I got a rabbi, I got a community. So, but who I know to myself, I know who I am. And this is a lie. What we are is a neshama. What we are is b'chol meidecha. And everything else is an add-on to us. So every Baal Teshuvah can, if they just understand what's going on over here, this is who they are. The Rebbe once said, maybe more than one time, but I heard it from the Rebbe, he said, if you look back at today's generation, their grandparents, or great-grandparents, or great-great-grandparents, or people with long beards, Litvaks or Chassidim, or Svardim. Can you show me one family that you could say for the last 500 years they were not religious? Maybe you can, but I'm saying it's so odd. So that's who the Jew is. And I've studied this. I look at pictures from people in the 1860s and 70s and 80s. You see the fathers, you see the Zaydis with long beards, and then you can see their kids. I told you this. No yarmulke, completely shaven, Zionist, communists, gone, goodbye. Destruction of Judaism, 1880 and on, till coming to America and Eretz Yisrael and all over, they leave. Right? What happened? It's another story what happened. Everyone has their theories what happened, but that happened. Because take the two pictures and put them next to each other, and I could tell you names, but why should I? Right? But you go back, all the Zaydas were from people. And the Rebbe once said this, I heard it from the Rebbe at the Fabrengen. And now I can substantiate, because I'm, do history and research, you see Poshet. And the same is in our lives. That who we are is good, is emes, is elikus, b'chol meidecha. So when we learn here in the Maamar, Ein nifsekes le'olam, it's Mayim Chayim. So someone might say, well, I'm not Mayim Chayim. You know where I come from? I come from such troubled family, such mishigas, on and on and on and on. And I can trace, I remember I had a conversation with someone else who was diabetic, and he said, well, I traced this to the alcoholism in my family. Now, it could be that notion of alcoholism shows, and Hillel probably can give us more data on this, shows that there were issues. I understand. I'm not denying that. But so the alcoholism is an adjunct to the emes, the neshama. The neshama of a Yid is pure. The neshama is Mayim Chayim. So every one of us has to know this with 100%. And everything else, all the mishigas that came along, is only added on adjunct mishigas. And it's mishigas. And it's a problem. And it has to be dealt with. I'm not underestimating the abuse and all the issues. Those are real issues. And when something gets very stuck, it becomes hard and infested. And it's so hard to kratz away, to rub off. So it's the mishigas lasts a long time. So Chasidus says, Musar says, deal with the nitty-gritty and negativity. That's the approach of Musar. Chasidus, the Baal Shem Tov says, deal with the positive. And when you inspire yourself with more and more light, that itself will make you more sensitive to do tshuva.